Let's get it to create a Photoshop clone. And it's actually able to code up most of the features. How about this? Make a 3D interactive tourist map of Tokyo, and everything just works. Or how about this? Make an app that turns an image into a jigsaw puzzle. It's also able to get this with just one prompt. Or let's get it to make a financial analysis report on NVIDIA using this year's data. Here's what we get, and all the information is correct, and look at how comprehensive this is. Okay guys, this is pretty insane. We have a new open weights AI model, which means you can download this and run it locally and fine-tune it, and it's just as good as the top closed models out there, including GPT-5 and Claude 4.5. So MiniMax just released MiniMax M2, and this is extremely performant and capable. As you can see from this independent leaderboard, MiniMax M2 is currently the best open source model you can use right now, and this is especially strong in coding and agentic performance. In fact, I'll show you these benchmarks in a second, but let me just jump right in and show you how crazy this is. So currently, here's the online platform where you can use this. I'll link to it in the description below. And no, I'm not sponsored by them. This is just a really awesome AI model that you should check out. And currently, it's completely free to use the Pro mode, so take advantage of this. Let's start with an already super challenging prompt. Unfortunately, there's no dark mode yet for this interface, so your eyes are gonna have to suffer a bit for this video. But anyways, for my first prompt, let's get it to create a Photoshop clone with all the basic tools. And then here's a key phrase that I like to use. Put everything in a standalone HTML file. This ensures that all the code is self-contained and there's no missing packages or dependencies. Let's click run. Alright, here's what we get. In fact, at least on their interface, this is a thinking model and an agent, so you can actually expand its thinking process over here. So first it creates a comprehensive plan on what to code up with all these different features. It's actually a ton of features, and then it proceeds to code everything up. It's even checking the actual implementation to verify that the features are correctly implemented. And then it looks like it has detected some errors, so it also autonomously fixed these errors. And then finally, after completing everything, here is a link where I can test this out. So let's click on this link, and here's what we get. So let's start by drawing some stuff. It looks like the brush works. Let's change this to a different color and draw some more stuff. It also looks like down here we have the options to add another layer, so let's add a layer on top of that, and then let me paint with a blue brush this time. And if I toggle the visibility of this blue layer, notice that it's able to disable that layer. So let me enable this again. Everything is working so far. Let me try to erase now. It looks like the eraser works, and notice that it's only erasing layer 2. Let me select layer 1, and then now it's erasing layer 1. Very cool. Let me see if this paint bucket works. Let me change the color to something like this, and it looks like that works too. Okay, so I just randomly drew some more stuff for layer 1, and then let's try all these filters and effects. So if I press blur, it looks like it is blurring my layer. And then if I press sharpen a few times, it is sharpening the image again. How cool is that? Now, if I press brightness, it is increasing the brightness. If I press contrast, it's increasing the contrast. If I press saturation, it's increasing the saturation. And then if I press grayscale, it converts this into grayscale. If I invert this, it indeed inverts the colors. And then let's try sepia, and that also works. So it seems like all these filters and effects also work. So there you go. Here is a really basic Photoshop clone with layers and filters and effects, and all the brush and color settings work. This is pretty good for an open source model. Alright, next let's try something even harder. Let's get it to create a 3D visualization of Tokyo. Let's get it to include a sidebar that lists all these places, plus to make it even more difficult, let's get it to add a day and night toggle. And then for 3D maps, I need to often explicitly tell it to use 3box and 3.js, which are popular packages used to create 3D maps. And then here is also an important key phrase I like to use, which is to get it to find publicly available map layers to use. And then, like before, here's another key phrase to keep everything self-contained. Alright, here's what we get. So here it starts to create a plan, and then I do need to tell it to continue for it to proceed. But then afterwards, it proceeds to code up everything, and here is what we get. So let me just click on this HTML file, which would look something like this. Now this is a very interactive map, which I can move around, and I can also click on a certain neighborhood like Shinjuku, and it would automatically zoom to that neighborhood, and everything is in 3D. Now, right now, this page is crammed into the side window, so what I'm going to do is actually click on this button to download the HTML and then open it up. And here is what we get. And as you can see, if I move around the map, everything is very interactive. I can use my mouse to zoom in and out. I can also use the right click button to rotate the map. And let's see this time of day toggle. That is so cool. So this basically turns this into like dark mode or night mode. Very nice. And then if I select toggle 3D buildings, I'm not sure what exactly that does. It doesn't look like that does anything. But anyways, let's click on some neighborhoods. So let's try Shibuya, and it'll automatically zoom to Shibuya, which seems like it's over here. And then let's try Asakusa. Now it's zooming to Asakusa, which is over here. Very cool. Let's try a few more. Let's try this one for luxury shopping, and it takes me over here. So everything just works except for this 3D buildings toggle. This is again very impressive for an open weights model. Most of the closed models like Claude 4.5 don't even come close to coding this up. Alright, next let's get it to code up some challenging but fun web apps. So let's make an app that turns any photo into a jigsaw puzzle with adjustable piece counts and snap to fit pieces. Again, it proceeds to code everything up. This time it doesn't ask me should it proceed, it just did everything autonomously. And finally, if you scroll all the way down, here is what we get. So this time, instead of just an HTML file, it actually generated a live link for me to try out. So let's click on this link, and here is what we get. Here, I can choose the difficulty, in other words, how many pieces this should have. Let me upload this image and then click Start Puzzle. And here we go. It broke this image down into a 6x6 grid. Here, I'm able to drag these pieces around like this. Very cool. So everything just works. Now, instead of 6x6, let's try 10x10, and then let's choose this image and then press Start. So here you can see it broke this image up into a 10x10 grid, and again, I can move the pieces around to solve the puzzle. Alright, here's a really tricky prompt that only GPT-5 could get correct so far. So let's get it to make a visual simulation of a beehive construction, showing hexagonal cells forming and worker bee paths and honey storage. Include sliders for colony size and resource availability. So it actually coded this up really quickly. Let's click on this HTML file to view the page. Now here's what it looks like. This page is like crammed into the side window, so what I'm going to do is click on this button to download the page and then open it up separately. And here's what we get. So we do get hexagonal cells, we do get bees trying to go out to forage, although the gray hexagonal cells shouldn't really be there. And then it looks like they are like gradually filling each cell with honey. I can increase the colony size over here, and you can see it immediately disperses more bees. I can also increase resource availability, so it seems like now the bees are filling the cells faster and it's building this colony a lot faster. And they also give me some nice stats down here. Now, this doesn't look bad. There are some errors with this, and it's not as good as GPT-5's generation, which looks like this. But also note that other top models like Grok 4 or Claude 4.5 don't even come close to generating a decent looking beehive. So in terms of an open weights model, MiniMax M2 is extremely good. Alright, next, let's test its ability on doing research and compiling information. So let's get it to create a financial report on NVIDIA based on this year's data. Make it interactive and visually appealing. Alright, here's what we get. You can see it's actually browsing through all these pages to find the relevant information and financial metrics. And then afterwards, it gives us this live dashboard, which we can access. So let me click on this, and here's what we get. So if I scroll down a bit, here it contains a lot of key metrics, a company overview, the stock price performance, and it even pulled like the open, low, high, and close, and the volume every day. And indeed, the stock is trading at 191. So this information is actually accurate. And then down here are some more financial metrics. Here it gives me a market analysis and their position, AI market trends, and it even gives me some analyst predictions and targets. And apparently the Wall Street recommendation is that it's a strong buy. And it even gives me a forecast of the price from now until like 2030, which is pretty cool. I tried this prompt with the other closed models and they were not able to give me this much detail. And holy smokes, look at this. It even pulls up some news and insights about NVIDIA. So it just decided to create this like mini blog on this page so I can read further. That is so cool. And if I click on one of these articles, it actually takes me to the correct link. Very cool. And then here are some risk factors and strategic outlook, etc., etc. So this is a super comprehensive report. Again, very impressive for an open weights model. While we're on the topic of data, let's also just copy and paste some data into its prompt and get it to format it nicely into a chart. So what I'm going to do is take this leaderboard from LM Arena, and I'm just going to copy this table up to like the 10th model and then paste it in here. So notice that it's just raw text. This isn't even formatted into a table. And at the top here, let's write, turn this into a nice responsive graph instead of a table. All right, this time it gives me a live link. So let's click on this. And here is what we get. Very cool. Let me actually pull the original table in a side window so we can actually verify its accuracy. So indeed, Gemini 2.5 Pro is ranked number 1, and it has a score of 1451 with a confidence interval of 4 with 54,000 votes. And indeed, that information is correct. And then in second place, we have Claude Opus 4.1. And if you look at the numbers, this is also correct. And it even color codes the company at the bottom. I guess one thing I would like for it to show is actually the confidence intervals at the end of each bar. But other than that, everything else is formatted really nicely. So as you can see with MiniMax M2, you can easily just copy and paste any raw data and get it to format it into a nice report or presentation like this. Speaking of AI tools, you've got to check out Gamma, the sponsor of this video. Gamma is the most popular AI tool for making presentations, websites, and socials easily. With Gamma 3.0, they've introduced game-changing tools like Gamma Agent and Gamma API. Gamma Agent is your intelligent AI co-pilot. It's like having a trusted teammate who actively researches, edits, and reshapes your content. With its smart summarization, Gamma Agent can condense long articles or pull insights from URLs into ready-to-use slides in seconds. For example, I can ask Gamma Agent to fact-check my presentation, and it'll automatically search the web and add the appropriate sources and hyperlinks. Or I can get it to create a slide on competitors, and it did all the competitor research autonomously. Plus, with the new Gamma API, you can tap into Gamma's power and connect it to tools like Zapier, Make, or other data sources to streamline your workflow. Whether you're a marketer, agency, educator, consultant, or anyone creating tons of content, Gamma is your all-in-one platform. It makes crafting beautiful presentations, websites, social media carousels, and documents a breeze, even if you have zero design skills. Join over 50 million users and try Gamma for free today. The link is in the description below. Also, speaking of data, let's see if it can code up a CRM dashboard with all these different components. I wanted to include interactive charts and graphs such as funnel visualizations, pie charts for lead sources, heat maps for activity tracking, etc., etc. Here's what we get. Again, if I scroll down, it gives me a link which I can click into, and here is our CRM dashboard. Everything is designed very nicely, everything just works, and I really love this activity heat map, and everything is responsive and formatted very well. I can also click on this settings at the top to add or remove certain components on this page. Very nice. And it even gave me this theme dropdown where I can convert this into a dark theme or green theme or blue theme. Very nice. For your reference, even Claude Sonnet 4.5 cannot code something like this very well. Next, let's see if it can generate some simple video games zero shot. I'm gonna get it to create a 3D racing game through some neon lit cyberpunk tracks with speed boosts and collision physics. Let's see what we get. Let me click on this HTML, and again, it looks like the game is squished in this side window, so let me actually download this HTML and open this up in a separate page. Alright, so let's click on Start Race, and here is what we get. So it's a very basic game, everything works. It seems like if I hover over a ring, then it speeds me up. If I hit one of the blocks, then it slows me down. So it did incorporate like speed boosts and collision physics. Now, this is just a straight road. I would like this race course to be more complex, but in general, everything works and it's already pretty good. So here's the same prompt with GPT-5, and you can see it's very similar. In fact, these are the only two models that could generate a working racing video game like this. Again, Claude 4.5 or Grok 4 were not able to generate a working game with the same prompt. Next, I also want to test its ability to do research. So let's try this prompt. For a child diagnosed with this super rare disease, which we don't really have a lot of information about, research all current treatments, experimental therapies, and management strategies. Organize everything into a detailed report. So it proceeds to search the web for all this information, and at the end, it looks like it gave me this PDF. So if I click on this, they have a nice PDF loader where I can read this, or what I'm going to do instead is click on this download button and then open the PDF in a separate window. So here's what the PDF report looks like. It contains a ton of information, and it was even able to code up some graphs about its prevalence and demographics. This is super detailed, and then it gives us information on the age of onset and survival data. It talks about some current approved treatments, again with some very comprehensive charts for your reference, and then it also talks about clinical efficacy and treatment outcomes. Everything is super detailed. So here we have some therapies and clinical trials, and then biomarkers and diagnostics, and again it was able to code up some really nice charts about these topics. Here's an even cooler chart. So here it decided to create a flowchart of the recommended diagnostic workflow for this disease. Here is our suspected patient, and here's the flowchart that we should go through to basically diagnose the patient. Very cool. And then here are some disease management strategies, genetic counseling protocols, and then clinical recommendations. Everything is just super comprehensive, and it lists all the resources and references at the end of the report. Again, this is very impressive for an open weights model, and I really like how it's able to take raw data and code it up into charts to make it more visually appealing. Now, as with all AI models, it's really important to test how often it hallucinates, or basically, how often does it make stuff up. I'm going to ask it to give me details about Stable Diffusion 5, which does not exist, but here I'm claiming that it was released today. Let's click run. Alright, so here it's proceeding to search the latest information about Stable Diffusion 5, but afterwards, here it says that the latest official version is 3.5, not version 5. And then it proceeds to give me the details of SD 3.5, which is great. So it did not hallucinate and just make stuff up. Here it says there's no official announcement of a Stable Diffusion 5 release from Stability at this time. So that sums up some of my quick tests using MiniMax M2. Next, let's go over its specs and performance. So here's their official release page, and like I said at the beginning, the really awesome thing about MiniMax M2 is that it's open source, or more technically, open weights. Let's take a moment to appreciate why this is such a big deal. You see, the top AI labs out there have spent probably billions of dollars training the best and most intelligent AI models we can use today. This includes OpenAI and xAI, Anthropic, and Google. So the fact that MiniMax is offering this level of intelligence for us for free, which would take billions of dollars to train, is already incredible. Also, here's something to call out. Not just most, but all the top American AI models out there are closed. This includes GPT and Gemini and Grok 4 and Claude. That means if you want to use these models, you're forced to use them through their platform or through their API. But what if you have some sensitive data, or you're a business and you have some private enterprise data? If you use one of these closed models, they potentially have access to your data. In other words, if you use Claude, Anthropic could potentially see your chats and data. So the only truly secure way to use AI models, especially for sensitive information if you're a business, is to run an open weights model like MiniMax or Deepseek or Qwen locally or on premise. That way it never touches the cloud and you can run this completely offline. So that's the value of open weights, and the fact that MiniMax created such an intelligent model and they decided to make it open is just incredible. Next, let's look at its specs. MiniMax M2 is a mixture of experts model. Think of it as like a team of AI agents working together to help you solve your task. Now, this has 230 billion total parameters, but when you use it, only 10 billion parameters are active. For your reference, Deepseek R1 has 671 billion parameters. So this is like 3 times smaller. And then even the largest version of Qwen 3, which is also a mixture of experts model, it has 20 billion active parameters. So this is like 2 times more efficient than Qwen. So here are some benchmark scores for your reference. And this includes software engineering and also agentic use cases. As you can see, it's the best open model out there, and it's pretty much on par with the top closed source models, including Gemini 2.5 Pro and GPT-5 Thinking. And it's especially good at agentic performance. And if you look at this independent leaderboard called Artificial Analysis, and you rank all the AI models by intelligence, notice that MiniMax is number 5. This is currently the best open source model out there, and it's just slightly less performant than some of these closed models. Now this is open, so you can just download and run this locally, but if you choose to use it through their API, this is also insanely cheap. So it only costs roughly 50 cents per million tokens, whereas the other top models are like many times more expensive. Here's another chart comparing all these models on performance versus price. The y-axis is intelligence, the higher the better, and then the x-axis is price. The more right the model is, the cheaper it is. So ideally, you would like a model to be in this top right quadrant. And as you can see, MiniMax M2 is all the way over here. So this is the best bang for your buck. It's the best balance between performance and cost. Here's another chart comparing speed versus price. So this time the y-axis is speed, and again, it's best to be in this top right quadrant, which means it's fast and it's cheap. And MiniMax M2 is over here. Now, you can use MiniMax M2 using this online interface, and like I mentioned at the beginning, currently the Pro version, where you can deploy multiple agents to help you solve a task, this is free for you to use. So definitely take advantage of this and give it a shot. But in addition, going back to this page, if you scroll down a bit, this contains all the instructions on how you can actually download and run this model locally. So the model is already released on Hugging Face. Note that this is a huge model of like 230 gigabytes. So this is more meant for enterprises or people who are serious about running the most intelligent model on-prem. Some people claim that at FP8 precision, this can easily fit on 4 H100s. And then here it contains guides on how you can use these tools to deploy this locally. By the way, quick plug again, this video is not sponsored by them, but MiniMax is also the company behind High-Law 2.3, which is like one of the leading video models that was just released yesterday. This is extremely good at physics and world understanding. You can even generate Will Smith just with a text prompt. In fact, I already did a full review video on High-Law 2.3 yesterday, where I compare it with the other top video generators out there. So see this video if you want to learn more. Anyways, that sums up my review on MiniMax M2. This is currently the best open source AI model you can use. And best of all, they offer a free platform for you to test this out. Let me know in the comments what you think of this, and if you've been playing around with MiniMax M2, let me know what other cool things you were able to get it to do. As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week. I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel. So to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.